collar, white collar, black professors, white scholars, politicians, Dalai Lamas. Everybody in the whole wide world need hope if I be honest. I'm in that number.
New York Times says 2 of Martin Luther King Jr. children speak out against Trump.
When you hear the President of the United States say, why do we need to have so many people from these South and Central American places, Africa? Why don't we have more people from Norway? How do you take that?
Well, I think those comments are extremely racist comments. And I think that the president has got to be engaged in some sensitivity and heart changing. And when I say heart, we got to appeal to his heart, because there's something wrong, it seems, to me, when you make comments that way. And maybe that's what you believe. I mean, it must be the first thing he believes, because that's the first thing that came up. And the reality is diversity is what's made this nation great. People from all over the world have come to our shores and made this country great, and diversity will continue to build upon our country.
So there are two things. One, you really believe that the president has a problem with his heart?
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you say something like what he said, I do have to at least raise that question. Some may go further and say he is a racist. What I am saying is his comments were extraordinarily racist.
What's the difference between saying something that's racist and being a racist?
Well, I think we have to, the thing that we have to be, there are a lot of people who can say things racist, and that's unfortunate. So it's unfortunate, his comments. But my question and concern is, he is the president of the United States. He has the ability to execute on that racism. And if he does that, then it definitely says he is a racist.
He says
if he does
he is not a racist. He says he is the least racist person that we will ever interview. You met with him last year. When you looked him in the eye, what was your sense?
I wasn't evaluating that particular subject at that time. I was focused on a very narrow issue of voting rights and voter suppression. He later on came out and created a voter fraud commission. Obviously, it is disbanded, so there was no voter fraud. He's not addressed that issue yet. My issue was an issue of saying, let's put a picture on the Social Security card, and therefore we will give everybody, we take away that issue of ID. Everybody will have an ID. And he said at the time, that sounds like an interesting idea. I'm going to convene and have you come to the White House once I'm elected, which would have been the next day, actually, was sworn in. And of course, obviously, that has not happened.
He got a lot of dap for meeting with you last year. It mattered to people that Martin Luther King III went and met with President Trump. Do you regret that meeting, given what's happened since?
No, I do not regret. I think you have to always appeal to those in leadership. In the late 50s, my father appealed to President Eisenhower and Vice President Nixon and had a relationship with Vice President Nixon. In the early 60s, my father appealed to President Kennedy and Vice President Johnson. And then in the mid-60s, President Johnson and Vice President Humphrey. We've got to always be in dialogue, appealing to the administration if we ever want to see true change come in our nation.
Let me ask you to comment on what Alveda King, your niece, said about the president. She gave him a much more positive review. She thinks it's outrageous that he would be called racist, that because he respects the lessons and teachings of your father and that he has worked on prison reform and some other issues, she believes that he should be held in high esteem.
I think everybody has, in all families, we all have different points of view. No family is monolithic. No group of people are monolithic. And so I would counter that. And, you know, one of the things, if you remember, the president went to see the Pope, and he gave the Pope all of my father's books. What I would employ the president to do is to get those books for himself and to read them. And then he can begin to understand who Martin Luther King Jr. was and what he was doing.
You don't think he's read your father's books?
I doubt it. I'd be very surprised. I'd be pleasantly surprised, but I'd be very surprised.
You think he'd give them as a gift to the Pope but not know what's in them?
I think that is exactly what happened.
Well, we don't know. And you can ask that one. Let me know what answer you get back from the White House about that. I got enough battles to fight.
In Atlanta, as the nation paid tribute to Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., as my nephew would say, Dr. Martin Luther the King Jr., he's the king of black people. I don't know where he get that stuff from. Some of his relatives sharply criticized President Trump on Monday over his outlook on race and its effect on the country, nearly half a century after Dr. King's death. You ever notice Trump never did a speech of unity? And if he did, it ended up being more divisive than ever. Our collective voice in this honor must always be louder than the voice of one who speaks sometimes representing these United States, whose words sometimes do not reflect the legacy of my father. The Reverend Bernice King, Dr. King's youngest child, said at Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta, addressing the congregation where her father was a co-pastor between 1960 and 1968. Mrs. King added, "We cannot allow the nations of the world to embrace the words that come from our president as a reflection of the true spirit of America." Mrs. King, remarkably, during a crowd upbeat event in Dr. King's honor, came days after Mr. Trump was accused in a meeting about immigration of using crude words to describe Haiti and Africa countries, and of suggesting that the United States should admit more people from places like top white nations in Europe, Norway, Denmark, Sweden, places who would not give up their freedom. They live in total freedom and peace and happiness and quality, with a lesser work week and a living wage, education and health care absolutely free. What make you think, Donald Trump, they will be inspired to come here unless it's for a specific reason? Most of these people in these other nations come here for a specific reason. And the specific reason is we crapped up their country and now they're refugees. Mr. Trump, speaking to reporters on Sunday night in Florida, denied making any inflammatory remark and flatly declared, "I'm not a racist. I'm the least racist person that you have ever interviewed. That I can tell you." Really, Donald Trump, what makes you the least racist? Because you got Dr. Ben Carson? My granddad always told me that one of the ways racists try to prove that they're not a racist is by surrounding themselves around a bunch of minorities. But yet the whole time they're still racist. They use minorities as a cover-up. Case in point, Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton always surround themselves around black people. People called them the first black president. Spend quality time, same thing with George Bush and things like that. Now, am I saying these people racist? Like I said, I look at the policies, and all I can say is these are racist policies. Crime bill racist policies. Welfare reform racist policies. Calling kids super predators, I can go on and on and on. Racist. Racist. So Trump, stop that. The way you read it, the way you went down on the Central Park boys, you wouldn't have did that if them boys was white, man. Come on. Come on. Come on. For you to say, "I'm not racist. I am the least racist person that you have ever interviewed, and I can tell you." On Monday, the Reverend Dr. Raphael G. Warnock, Ebenezer's senior pastor, spoke of a volcanic eruption of hate speech spewing from the president. "Mr. Trump, you need to repent," he said. In Washington, Martin Luther King Jr. III, a son of Dr. King, noted Mr. Trump's remark and said, "I don't even think we need to spend any time even talking about what it says. I don't think we need to spend any time talking about what it says and what it is." Now, the problem is that you have a president who say things, but has the power to execute and create racism. Mr. King said, "That's dangerous. Power and a dangerous position, and we cannot tolerate that. We've got to find a way to work on this man's heart." Now, that is Dr. King's sentiment. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. sentiment. We have to find a way to work on his heart. Now, me, that's how I normally do things. I find ways to work on people's heart. I believe love is greater than divisive division and resistance and things like that. But the person got to be open up to it. But that don't mean whether they open up to it or not, you still don't work on the man's heart. While two of Dr. King's adult children spoke out against the president on Monday, another relative, in an interview on Fox News on Saturday, defended Mr. Trump. President Trump is not a racist. Alveda C. King, a niece of Dr. King and a former Georgia state legislator, told Fox and Friends. In a brief remark at Ebenezer, Mr. Trump Housing and Urban and Development Secretary Ben Carson suggested that he had concerns about some of the remarks attributed to the president. I'm a member of the administration and I don't agree with the president about everything or of how it's said. Seemed to fool me, Mr. Carson, but okay. Who noted to some laughter that he did not even agree with everything that I've said. There's something to be said about this understanding message, Mr. Carson said. And if the way you say things is so inflammatory that people can't hear your message, it's not helpful. And that's why I don't do that anymore. Despite the partisan firestorm that he has resulted, despite the partisan firestorm that has resulted from Mr. Trump's remark, elected officials in both parties publicly celebrated Dr. King's work in Georgia, his birthplace, and the site of his marble and cast tomb along Auburn Avenue in Atlanta. Representative John Lewis, Democratic of Georgia, wrote on Twitter that Dr. King's legacy is a guiding light. Senator Johnny Isaacson, Republican of Georgia, said it was a day to honor and remember the leadership and the wisdom of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., whose legacy continued to make a positive difference in the lives of many people in our state and around the world. During a visit to Georgia last week, Mr. Trump approved legislation that upgraded the designation of the National Park Service site that honored Dr. King in Atlanta. And on Friday, he signed a proclamation marking the holiday on Monday and encouraged all Americans to observe this day with acts of civic work and community service in honor of Dr. King's extraordinary life. So how I'm going to do it? I'm going golfing. That's how Donald Trump did it. That's his way of observing this day with acts of civic work. Y'all go do it. I'm going to hit this, watch me do this drive, like George Bush said before during the Iraq War. The White House on Monday tweeted a video message from Mr. Trump in which he said Dr. King's dream is the promise stitched into the fabric of our nation, etched into the heart of our people, and written into the souls of humankind. And that was not his words. That was the words of a writer, because like me, he cannot form sentences that elegant. Mr. Trump, but I get what you're saying, Mr. Trump, but you went out and golfed instead of doing like most presidents do and doing what you said that we should do. Go out there and do community service. Mr. Trump spent part of the holidays in Florida at Trump International Golf Course, as I was saying, but White House officials did not confirm whether he played golf. He ain't going there without playing golf. The point is, did he go out there and serve the black community? I doubt it. All right, so, hey, look, they got a right to make this statement. I mean, their goal and their job is to carry on their dad's legacy and to say, hey, it's still about dealing with bringing on peace, stopping the greed of the wealthy. I mean, Dr. King hit so many points. Democratic socialism. We need to look out for the poor. We need to stop kissing up to the military complex. We need to leave these wars alone. We need to stop this. We need to lift up so many things that Dr. King represented, and their kids were right on point with this. And hey, look, whoever this other king was, let me tell you something I done told you before. You can't look somebody in the face and eye and say they're not a racist. Just because you hang out with them doesn't mean they're a racist. I know black racists just like I know white racists. Somebody say a black person can't be racist. Yes, they can. I know black people that loathe Chinese people who did nothing to them, Arab people and white people. Get out of here. So you can't say Trump is not a racist just because you hang around him. You know a person by his fruits, and his fruits will always reveal you out. And out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speak. And if you always speak in division and separation, that's what's in your heart. I'm Bob TV with the Rob Report. Talk to you soon. Peace. Hey, thank you for watching the webcast. By all means, make sure you like, subscribe, and share these videos. Go to YouTube right now and hit the notification button and hit the subscribe. And if you're interested in supporting the channel, by all means, there's a Patreon link. I will put a PayPal link, and the money toward that goes toward equipment, things like that. And last but not least, make sure you look at two sections down below. One is called Get to Know LS, the membership. The other one is Get to Know LS, the opportunity. What do you mean LS? LS is a program that called Legal Shield that I am an independent representative of. It has not, that company has nothing to do with my views. I fell in love with this program about a decade ago. I've been doing this for over a decade, offering the services to people to benefit and connecting people to the services, putting them in a position where equal justice under the law is not just on the Supreme Court building. It's actually becoming a reality in their lives by having this memberships. And this, with this organization, not only will you be able to know about your rights in a certain area, but you'll know about how to exert and execute your right with the power of attorney, top-rated attorney, backing you no matter where you go, without worrying about all this money coming out your pocket and things like that. So get to know LS, the member, financially. You can help contribute this program by becoming a member. Some of the proceeds of being a member of LS goes toward Freedom on Fire and the Rob Report. I'm Robert Bob TV Brown. I thank you for being a huge support to what we do here. I'll talk to you soon. Peace.